when you're in the dark zone, that's when the growth comes. I don't care what you've done in the past or who you are, but here you start zero with me. And I was like, this light bulb just went perfect. I haven't seen a GPS that kind of measures your team spirit and your attitude. We pride ourselves, Fijians, as being quiet and respectful. But if you're going to embarrass him in front of everybody, you embarrass him like that, he will just confidence. He'll be out of the room. He's gone. Rugby is just to help us. It's a place where you just practice your reps for life. Whether it be your standards, whether it be treating people, whether it be working under pressure, whether it be dealing with setbacks, everything. When we're hungry, you're hungry. When we're thirsty, you're thirsty. When we need help, you need help.
Welcome to Coaching Culture, a podcast about cultivating culture and leadership. I'm Ben Herring. I've been loving this side of the game for bloody ages. Today's guest is Joe Rokocoko. Joe is an absolute icon of the game, one of the best outside backs ever to play. 17 years as a professional, 96 games for the Blues in New Zealand, 98 games for Bayonne in France, 87 games for Racing in France, 68 games for the All Blacks. Record breaker. His 17 test tries in a season is still a world record. International players named him World Player of the Year in 2003. Nowadays, he is coaching at Racing in France, the club that has been a huge part of his life for the last decade. He has 4 children, 3 of them born in France. Joe, welcome to the Coaching Culture podcast.
Cheers, Ben. Thanks for having me here, bro. Following your podcast, I think I'm under-satisfied to be here, bro. I don't have qualification to be in this little podcast, but I appreciate the chat.
My friend, you do not need any qualifications at all. Your experience speaks absolute volumes. Now, just off air, you said how privileged you were. You're from a small village in Nundy. Now you're in Paris. How cool is that when you stop and just reflect on that sort of sentiment?
That's the blessings that you see around being in Paris. I think, as you mentioned, you're obviously in your village. It's the road, a little village on the way up to General Hotel for you local Fijian tourists. Then making my way down out to South Auckland, up in Mandurah. Then obviously career picked up, and now I'm just so grateful that I could be in the middle of in Paris, in a little place, Robinson, a little suburb in the south of Paris, being involved in a team that it's the longest team I've been involved with professionally. So I've been here longer than I've been with the Blues. So it's a team that's really grown into me, and I'm just so grateful that I'm a part of this team.
That's absolutely awesome, man. And how's your assimilation into French life in France? And what's the culture like over there for those that haven't been to France and haven't played rugby there? How's that culture treating you?
Oh, it's mad. In terms of rugby, it's actually mad. Yes, I enjoyed my time with the All Blacks, and the career I had back there was awesome. But a bit of myself said, man, I wish I came in 2 years earlier because of just the love of the game. It just hasn't changed to where we knew what the game was all about as a kid. Just the following of the small towns, communities. So in top 14, when most people might not know, we have the two northern teams as us and our rivals, Stade Francais, sorry, the pink team. And everyone else is in the south. And all the other teams are the south of France. So everyone in the south are just rugby mad. So if you do a road trip from the north and you go down south, you see soccer posts, then eventually see rugby convert into rugby posts. And all those people down there in the south of France are just, you have one souvenir I can take from being here is when I was in Bayonne and I used to wonder why the funding was so big. But when you look at the stand, you see all the different generations of the family come to the game. It's an event. It's a family event. There's no other event, which brings a bit of flashback for myself when playing in Weymouth Rugby. You had your 10 o'clock games as under 12s. Watch the seniors about after lunch, and you get ready for the All Blacks Test match afternoon games at Eden Park. It was just the custom. It was a tradition, and the traditions here is too big in terms of the rugby in general in France.
Yeah, and why is it? It is still strong, isn't it? It's just growing and growing in France. Like other places in the world, it's tapering or it's on a knife edge, but in France, it's not, is it? It's going strong.
It's going strong. You're getting stands filled up. Like Bordeaux, for instance, the past, majority of their 95% of their games have been, the 30 plus, full 30 plus, and the stands are full, despite if you're a big team or a small team. Blues, obviously, we'll probably be the only team as not as full because being in Paris, rugby doesn't have a real big following. We're having to compete with other sports with around the city. You got your football, your handballs, basketball's quite big here too. So president had to be think out of the box, and he created a beautiful stadium, which is La Défense Arena. So it's a closed off stadium. When it's rugby, you got your artificial turf, and then it can be lifted out, and there's a concerts. He said it got lights and everything. It's so busy. So we said, okay, if you don't know rugby, but you like entertainment, we'll bring you to the game, to Paris. So he kind of put that concept in. And so we gained a few supporters just because of the atmosphere and the feeling of being in a closed stadium and lights, and there's a bunch of guys trying to kill themselves, and you get the following of more people in Paris. So it's massive here. Another interesting fact was when the French football team had a game, the last 2 games they've had in France, they've had more viewing in the rugby games than the football team. So we've had more French players, French people watching rugby than the actual French football team. So you can see the interest has gone up, and we're just loving it.
And the passion is strong, isn't it, for rugby? Like people just, and then that suits the game of rugby because it's a passionate game to play, right? So the sort of every stereotype of a French person being that passionate person is very true with rugby, right?
It's very true because your whole family's connected to the club. It's your old school general philosophy of what rugby club's all about. It's your small communities. You drop everything on the weekends and we've got a game. Whether you be a plumber or a doctor or engineer or whatever, despite what status you are. I still remember that in my local club, sitting in the car park, and you just see different vehicles pop in, drop their kids off. Guys coming on the bus. Some guy comes in a Beamer, some guy comes in a ute in a truck. You got a van full of 12 guys, but the seat's only 10. But mate. But when you come into that little clubhouse, all your status and where you're from doesn't count. It's just the community living and support, what bigger purpose than the individual, or where you're from. And the history here is so massive. And that's why the foreign players who've come these past few years, they said, man, that's so awesome, man. You go to one who chant, use some pretty hostile places. I was quite lucky. I didn't understand French for the past 3 years. Well, I'm still trying to understand now. But a few of the words they came across, but they just rugby mad, which makes this game so colorful at the moment in France.
Yeah. I actually heard you say, when you talked about status doesn't count, I heard you say when you went to Bayonne that the coaches told you, I don't care what you've done. You're here now, something to that effect. And that's almost epitomizing. You had this amazing All Black career followed with international recognition. You get to Bayonne, club side, and they say, we don't care what you've done. Status doesn't count here. Is that true?
Count. That's deep. That's so true. I had a difficult moment because I just missed out on the World Cup in 2011. And the thing is, I couldn't leave early in case there was injuries. And so there was a month there that they were waiting, and I was a month late to the club. So in between that window, you still hadn't gone through that disappointment of missing out. Happy the boys won. I was actually there at the final, just very emotional because of the pain is finally healed. Then realizing 2 days after I had to fly to France. And so I went across there, wasn't physically fit, mentally sharp, played for the last 5 or 6 months of it. I was just floating, so comfortable. From then I just regret I didn't realize what I was going through and didn't address it. But it was affecting my way of training and my way of playing to the very point that my last 2 games when I come in and my home crowd was booing me, bro. So I was
really?
getting booed. Yeah. To that very, very point, and it got me because my wife and my one child back then was at the stands. They didn't know about it, and they took me back 2 weeks after we were flying back home, and I was like, how did I get to this point? Then I realized I was so focused on myself, and rather than these people invested a lot of money in this club that has so much history and rich history that they expect people to add. To add something into their identity. And I came in, just didn't do it. And I was like, well, I deserve that. And there's that saying that we always say in ABs, once an AB and always an AB. How was an AB? How was that? How was an All Black training then, Bayonne? He wasn't trained like an All Black. He didn't have a mindset of an All Black. So they had a self-look in the mirror kind of moment. Told myself, going to preseason, first and last, I'm getting booed. Before I get the respect of the crowd, I get my own respect for myself, which is closed mouth, just work, head down. And then I'll get the respect from my players because of how I trained. And then the coaches will get my respect, and then I win the crown by just the way I'll perform. By the end of that season, the last 3 games, we had the crowd cheering my name. Flip way through, but the big turning point, as you said, was Christophe Delou. He was the number 10 that was part of the French team that scored the best try of the world or something from Eden Park.
Yeah.
And he was the one I met during preseason, and he first thing he said, "Do you know who won the last team that won at Eden Park?" And I was like, "Yeah, we'll never forget that game." Was one of the tries. He goes, "Yeah, I was the guy that started that play. Started that counter attack. I was the last one." I'm like, "Where's this going to?" The dude just said, "All I want to know is this is the first time I'm talking to you, and I don't know, I don't care what you've done in the past or who you are, but here you start zero with me." And I was like, this light bulb just went perfect. I just needed someone just to give me a boot and bring me back down and start fresh. And I said, okay, I'll do my ways to do as much as possible to get your respect.
You start zero with me. It's a powerful statement, right? Yeah. What do you think? Well, what was going on? Like, I'm really intrigued on this, mate. And it's important for probably coaches to realize what players, like the impact of being dropped or not selected, actually sinks pretty deep, right? It's not just, oh, okay, fine. It weighed you down, right? Like it really.
It did. The big thing, like, obviously, the connection part of the human part is the biggest part. If you think of, well, yes, we coach how to pass left, how to pass right, strategies, but we're really life coaches in so many ways. Rugby is just a tool to get us into one step ahead in life, Rugby is just to help us as a place where you just practice your reps for life, whether it be your standards, whether it be treating people, whether it be working under pressure, whether it be dealing with setbacks, everything. There's a whole big mixture of things that you go through as a player. And the part of that as a coach is you helping and guide those people to work under those circumstances or under those situations. And the other tough part is dealing with 43 different personalities and bringing them to one cause. But the main thing for me is the connection part, which you get to know your players. Here, for example, we have Fijians, Tongan Samoans, Georgians, obviously your Frenchies. We've got a guy who plays for Chile, Argentinians. Imagine the room. I'll speak to a Fijian guy different to how I speak to a French guy in terms of the tone. The message is the same, but it's the way, the process of delivering it. I'll change my tone and the way I'll speak to these guys. Because of obviously Fijian, which just gives me a bit of a one step ahead, but also being here in France for a long time, you know what makes them tick.
Well, what's some of the examples there? Like, what is the difference between a Fijian and, say, a French player? What sort of adjustments would you have to do?
Adjustment is the tone, or you say it. We pride ourselves, Fijians, as being quiet and respectful. But if you're going to embarrass them in front of everybody, by the way, yes, you have to show videos. For example, you can show a Fijian guy and be honest, guess what, you're useless, you look lazy. You embarrass him like that, he will just confidence, he'll be out of the room. He's gone.
He's gone.
In terms of spirit, he's gone. But in other ways, Fijians or Islanders deal with feelings of they're so proud of their culture and all they want is to make people proud. So the way of giving your questions will be like, we said we're going to do this, but I didn't see you there. I didn't see you into the line. And I had confidence you're going to be there, but you let me down. One turn, words, disappointment, and they'll feel the worst ever. Because it's like your parents, because you're so respectful to your elders. You don't need to be, pulling your hair out and throwing chairs or whatever, which I've got to learn now, which I didn't actually know. It was a bit of a bonus that I had in the pocket when I got into this opportunity as coaching. You come as a player, you were raised in New Zealand pretty much. I still had my Fijian kind of core and background, and coming over to France and seeing how they work. Frenchies, you can be direct and be hard. But then I go, look, I'll show that because I just want you to improve this because I care for you. I need you. And you go, okay. Because they'll work through emotions, they have that Latin blood,
Yeah.
because I need you. When you tell them I need you can hit that guy. It's like, because you're a little guy that's aggressive, blah, blah, blah. And they'll, you can get them emotionally connected to what you're trying to deliver, which I've slowly tried to, I think, use that as my role at the club at the moment. I guess when Patrice, this new coach, Patrice came on board, Telezo, he said, I want you to sign on again because you bring the balance in terms of, I don't want a French. I don't want another foreigner. I need someone in the middle who can help me weave between, because he's straight. He's from 0 to 100. He's like, wear your helmet before the books start flying across. But he's, wears his heart in the sleeve. But he's such a good manager in terms of people. So I'll know where my place is. Sometimes you question, where's my place? Am I a drills guy? Am I a presenter guy? What's my place in this team? Which I've always asked the president before signing, what can I add? Just sign me out if I'm going to add something, but not just another person on the room.
Mate, I think that's really a fascinating awareness as a coach, is to ask that question, what's my place in the team? Like, I don't think people ask it enough, like knowing that there's range of options there, isn't there? You don't have to be all encompassing. If you've got a coaching team of 3 or 4, you want difference and you want people with different perspective. So to actually ask yourself, what's my place here? Where's my value? Where's my strength? What do I love? All those questions is almost like a coaching 101, don't you think?
It's your prime examples are the coaches I've been with obviously Ted, Shag, and Smithy. Steve Anton, Graham Henry, Wayne Smith, totally 3 different. You have your Mr. Miyagi with Graham Henry, just all wise and wisdom, just looking over, just putting the puzzles together. Then you got Shag, dry humor, just gives you a little nudge on questions. Were you good enough today, kid? I don't think you were, but he gives you a question, that question's in your head. Shucks, did I give enough?
Yeah.
I've given enough of myself.
Yeah.
And he walks away with a smirk, but and then you got Smitty, the bone deep Smitty, the purpose, the cause of doing things. And you have the mixture of that with Gilbert Anoka, who just gels the team together in terms of harmonizing a group together. It's a perfect mix. So I've learned, like in so many ways. Well, I've had a lot of life coaches, which my coaches. Well, my first ever coach was it's on the 12s in Weymouth Rugby. Big Chris, his name was Mark Robbins. They're not Mark Robinson.
Yeah.
But he had this massive beard, tattoo in his head, tattoo in his arms. Always came with a vest, ripped jeans. And I was 12 years old. I was like, every single word was a swear word. So it was before the drill was one word, another drill. But he was so ruthless, He was like, tsunami, rain, shine, hail, you're going to come to this club, you're going to train hard, you're going to train it to the ground. I was like, whoa. And he had 2 sons who were in the same team, and he used to tell his other son to get the other son, and they would just tackle each other until they cried. So I was like, first seeing that as a kid, it was like, wow. And then we lost the final, then he said, worst ever speech, he said, you're the worst ever kids I've coached. And the kids are crying in the change room. I was more shocked. But it gave me a lot of resilience, toughness for some reason. Because in the end, the following year, with the majority of those boys, we won the titles in our age group because we built this hard skin, And then we obviously, throughout the years, you come up with your different coaches who are totally opposite. But I look back, Ben, and the majority of people, or the coaches that I've been involved with, like we've been under, I was like, wow. Schoolboys, Joe Smith, he was the one telling me outside, inside lines, bounce, all the smaller details you're learning, back in 2002, 2001. Of how to change angles the last minute with your shoulders or hips, lying with your body. And then you went up my first Super Rugby team, Ted, and Peter Sloaney, Bruce Robinson, 50 years as a manager. Then throughout those years, it goes on the list, but in terms of the amount of quality coaches who have gone under, and I've learned a lot from each of those coaches.
I think it's amazing, mate, that you're referring to, like, you had obviously a stellar career, and you're still talking about the coaches that coached you when you were a young kid, and just what they left, the mark they left on you. Like your 12-year-old self, a hard-ass coach, stayed with you, and stuff you learnt back then. So, like, I think that's cool for coaches to realize that the impact they leave isn't just the X's and O's like you talked about, but you are life coaches. That coach taught you, that Mark Robertson taught you resilience and gave you a thick skin, even though at the time you're like, wow, this is hard. You look back on an All Black career and go, he actually helped that process, right? With his intensity and things like that. I find that kind of incredible.
And when I said you got Titch as well, Titch was, oh my gosh. We heard all the stories when they were young. I had came to a point then I was lucky enough. I was still in school and I got selected to be in Auckland 17, and I had a shock of a game because I've been was New Zealand schoolboys 19s in the age groups, and the sevens was the end of the season, and I just wasn't in the mood. But I got selected, and I don't know why I'm chosen. So I played horrible. An old man gives me a little speech in the van because he invited the Raeleys to come and watch the game in Albany against Harbour. He said I was walking around. I you lazy boy. We all came to watch. I was like, oh, if you don't want me to play, I won't play. The old stubbornness, but I was just knackered. I didn't like sevens. Anyway, there was a North Island North Island competition happening. And my old man kind of thought about what he said, and he came the next day. He goes, son, if you want to go, I know you can, but if you don't, you're tired, you can stay. Well, maybe whatever you choose. So he played the old mind game. So obviously I did the opposite. He goes, no, Dad, I'll go. I'll have a crack. So I went into that competition, and at the end of that competition is to play in Palmerston North, the national champs, seventh. They named the team, and I didn't have much of a good tournament. I was just floating, just doing it for the sake of the old man. And they named the squad the big initial seven squad. And it's the first time in my whole life I was so happy I wasn't selected to be in a representative team. I was like, oh, I didn't make it. I was so happy. And my dad was like, don't worry, son, next year. Oh, yeah, Dad, it's okay. Don't worry. And they said, we got to name another 3 guys who's going to be in the extended to cover injuries. And they named my name. I was like, oh, no. So in terms of where I was mentally of burnout, then to be added on to Titch's training camp at the end of the season, that was a moment that I appreciated the most because it was the training. It's your little window of, okay, it's the difference of saying, I've got this, I'm going to make this and grow from this, or that window's past, time doesn't wait for anyone. And so I just said, okay, I'll take it. And the first test remember Tony Kunmayu?
Yep. Yep.
So we done the phosphate test. We were like sprinting 2 or 3, and I still remember Rashi watching us. Guess, okay, let's see these young kids go. But obviously, he knew our speed was just going to get slower and slower.
Yeah.
And we did all the other tests and the trainings that we did. I was gone, but I had built this little resilience of the training, like I mentioned before, from the old coach. There was still, even though I wasn't the fittest, but I'll take that extra step to finish it. I still wanted to prove myself to the point I ripped my quad, just because my quads are really tight, but I didn't want to show, oh, it's a young kid, he wants to pull out, because after an hour 30 of training, he doesn't want to do that last 15 100s to finish off. And I done when I learned from, but I still remember Craig the Goldie always said, it's all in the head, Rocks, it's all in the head. And this whole thing, Rashi said, when you vomit in training, if you're a newbie, so Titch will carry on the training until the newbies will vomit, and then it's okay, we've done it. A lot of things came out there in terms of resilience and toughness. Titch taught me so much in terms of that area, repetitive speed.
Isn't it amazing, like when you hear those stories about like the hard things, whilst they're hard at the time, they're actually teaching you amazing life lessons. This is where the value of the game is. You talked about rugby as you're a life coach, and whilst you're getting people to do some ridiculous fitness activities there, what you're actually teaching is life lessons about persistence, resilience, determination, grit, all these things which are amazing for outside of the game. You're doing it in the game. And not all sports, I don't reckon, you get that. And this one is a team combat sport with some pretty intense physical requirements, unlike anything else in life.
Exactly. And I'm quite fortunate that we're like going into that transition in terms of the professional help. Going in from 2003, the pro was a high-level pro, era in terms of professional rugby. Then fading out into this last part of when you have a lot of GPS and you got, me and Fred always, give our trainers a headache when he says 2 minutes or what, 4 minutes extra, because as past players, you get the feeling of you see the body language, but you get the vibe of the boys are actually investing themselves here. They're feeling it. The numbers the importance of numbers is not in this very moment. The importance right now is the person feeling real confidence that he's getting his lines right. The boys feel this training as everyone's on, singing, everyone's in timing, that's your money time. When you feel this connection to the boys and then humming, then you go, no, top time. That you can make up the next training. But if you're in the moment when you feel you got enough experience, when you know to balance off what's needed and what's when you have to put the handbrake, that goes a long way. But yeah, it's a hard balance. But in saying that as well, you got to respect because they got a job to do. They've done all the figures and the stats and so forth. But you have to give them respect in terms of our trainers and our analysts as well. Deservedly need the respect as they're important to this group as well, as part of this big puzzle that we're trying to all connect together.
And I think this is a really topical point in modern coaching because, as you said, there's a lot of change. There's a lot more science, data, GPS, which says a lot of stuff, which is all good stuff and correct, and you've got to pay attention to it. But sometimes there's a belief too, and I certainly agree with this. You got to push through the science sometimes because rugby's not just a scientific game. It's an emotional and psychological game, and you're practicing that as much as the physiological stuff of the body. So, like a GPS data scientist might say, "Hey, it's time to stop now. You've run 2.3 Ks," but the emotional psychological side is, well, let's keep going because we're going to learn how to push through when it's really tough because it will get tough at times. And that's a different sort of practice. And that's, again, going back to your sentiment around that's a life thing because it will be tough in life sometimes and you've got to push through. And it may look good on paper, but the theory goes out the window when you're under the pump.
Yeah, that's the hard balance. But I haven't seen a GPS that kind of measures your team spirit and your attitude. So it's when you get to that point when you're in the dark zone, that's when the growth comes. When you're in the moment where everyone is dead and you're looking at your mates making an effort to get off the ground, that's where the growth, GPS can't measure that. That's a part that you visually and you feel within is like, okay, this guy's got my back today. I can feel the boys humming today. The air is so thick in terms of everyone wanting to work hard for each other is really here. So those are the part you can analyze from the back, but you can engage in how the training is going. Because in the end, you want to come off that field better person of the last training, You want it, every time is crucial now we know in trainings. So are we benefiting the most for just staying an extra 2 minutes? And that was your money time. Because when that money time comes onto the field in the last 81 minutes of the game, I guess, no, sorry, my threshold was here because my legs is dead. I think my GPS normally, this is my cutoff time. You find out more of the character of the players when they get into when they push to the edge. Yes, but it's managed, but controlled.
Haven't seen a GPS that measures team spirit. Might be one of the best quotes that I've heard on this. The dark places is where growth happens. And I think that's exactly right, mate. It's certainly where socially, when you go through a rough experience with a group of people, a traumatic event or a really hard physical exertion, you actually come together as people a lot and you connect over something, that shared experience, right? And it's hard to measure the value of like people coming together over something.
Yeah.
But in a sport like rugby, it is what the whole thing's about. It's like you've got to take yourself to a place which you wouldn't experience anywhere, any other part of life, right? It's like you're running over no man's land in World War One. Like you've got to take yourself to a mindset which is so different from the office or the neighborhood or
Yeah.
the community. It's like that example, right? It's cool.
It's an example of where we obviously know as one of our greatest All Blacks, of Richie. That's one word, one line that I'll never forget is him saying that growth is that we take it we got to get to that dark place. No one wants to be in that dark place. There's only a few can get into it. That's why there's not many people out there that succeed because it's so hard. But if we can get a good 80% of us into that little sweet zone, we kind of chances more higher than anyone else because that that dark place becomes so comfortable. You see it later in your career when you start changing your mindset when there's pressure. I remember my last few years when the points are real close and there's a bit of a break and you can see the guy's eyes like real, pressure and intense, but you start looking at it as like, oh my gosh, what a game, eh? And he's shocked because the way you respond to that little moment, what a game, bro. I put a pressure here. You just change that mindset, but that dark place becomes the comfort place now. There's light, I'm comfortable here. I'm comfortable in this moment. So it's that's the challenge we try to do now in terms of the academy players coming up. Because at the moment they're getting some ridiculous offers with no merit, with no miles in their legs, or in terms of their career, they've actually not shown anything that paying them by potential, but nothing in terms of the grit. They haven't earned it as much in terms of on the field.
Some great show. Gee, that's some good stuff, that quote from Richie McCaw. We've got to get to that dark place. No one likes it, but we've got to go there until the dark place becomes the light place. And I think just to add on to that too, mate, like coaches, you twist and teach the learnings in that, right? Like when you're in that horrible place, you're sort of suggesting and inspiring the players to think a different way about it. Like, we love this place. We're good in this. We're getting comfortable here. There's no problems here. We've got a glint in our eye and smiled up face, smile. Yeah, and we're teaching the life lesson from that. When it gets hard, we knuckle down, or whatever the centre may be for you and your people. And you're saying, mate, so you're experiencing now, you're in the academy role, and you're doing a lot of younger kids along with the assistant coaching. Are you finding that you're really having to coach this side of stuff to some of those younger players?
Yeah, it's quite a blessing in disguise to be like an assistant / in one role, so you can observe and scan things from afar, and to scan people from inside rooms or on the field. So I was in the academy for 3 years, and majority of the academy boys have come up. I was assistant now. 3 years in the professional, the senior team. So I was an assistant backs coach to Fred Michalak and done skills. And this year I got chucked in defense out of nowhere. Head coach goes, you got to do defense. I want you to do defense. I was like, Patrice, are you sure? I've never and that's a big responsibility. But in my head, I loved defense. I always loved it. And what gave me the confidence was because Smithy, he always encouraged me that I was one of those, wingers who, love to defend. And, Smithy's loved his defense. So that kind of encouraged me to go, okay, I can add something. But switching that into that role in terms of encouragement, but so every Fridays now, the head coach will give me a bit of a window that I could share something about defense or a theme or something. Like you said, when they get tired, what should we do? So I've gone around and trying to think outside the box to implement those things of who we're all about as different nationalities. My whole focus for this year is what's racing all about, what's our identity, and everyone just says attack, flair, counter-attack, flash players. I said, that's what we're known for, but no one knows us being ruthless and being aggressive in our defense. We're like softies. That's what we're known for in our defense. So just giving that question out like that, I was like, shucks, true. Everyone told me here, we just attack. That's what we do. Changing that, carrying on their theme onto this, changing our new identity. Just saying we've got a new mindset in terms of we're one of the rugged and ruthless defenders in this competition. For me as a defense, because I know that's gonna not come about overnight, but if I can get to the boys that they can believe, the character is the first and foremost for me, and the strategy comes later. If I can, I might be not the best coach, but if I can make the boys believe in a cause and a purpose, they can run through the wall for me if I ask them. And I can touch up the finer parts later on in terms of strategies and techniques and stuff, because every coach here has the IQ of everything, how to tackle properly or something. But if you can get the engine running in terms of giving them purpose into what they're doing, then you'll be just another defense coach. So they got to have a purpose and meaning of why they do things, which I've learned from Wayne Smith as one of those things that I've took on board. So that's my role at the moment. And last week we played Bayonne, and they're so hostile crowd. I took off one of Stu Lancaster. He showed us the Gladiator, the scene when there was a group of them, and there's Maximus, Maximus the leader.
Brutus
Turning it
Decimus Maximus, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife. I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
I should have told you to come on board and give you the old speech. But the whole theme of staying together in a circle, and anyone that comes out is going to be done, it won't survive. And that was the same theme was Bayonne. We were going into a crowd. So it's just painting something that the boys can. The season is long. Now, how do you get a team up every single week? So I love the challenge of that. Changing words, changing trainings, obviously, but not having their own same voice, not having to speak every time. There's a saying I would say, just speak when you need to speak. If you're going to add something, add something. Don't make it more complicated by just putting your little 5 cents in. That's, learning on the go. I'm enjoying it, but that's one of the learnings from it in terms of getting the boys and you know.
There's so much good stuff in there, Joe. Like, just to back up what Wayne Smith said, his quote that he says, if it doesn't have meaning, it's meaningless. And I think that's exactly what you talked about. I also loved how you asked that question, how are we perceived? I think that's a really awesome question for coaches to ask their team, even if you do it on an anonymous survey where you just put it out there, ask that as a question. What is the opposition? How do they perceive us? How do fans perceive us? How does a community perceive us? I reckon that's a really enlightening question, because the answers you'll get might surprise you, and it'll give you as a coach a really good barometer or thermoregulation of what's actually the perception. And whilst it doesn't always mean it's true, someone's perception of you is their reality. And, if all your team is saying opposition think we're a bit soft on defense, then that's going to give them confidence going into games. So that's something like, that's probably a coaching criteria to work on, right? That's a big thing.
Because this question comes up a lot for myself, is like when we first arrived with Chris Masoy, we were signed up with Casey Lala, Ross Filippo, we all signed in the same year, and Desi. And we were looking at the facilities, and me and Masi just looked at each other. It's like, what's the excuse here? You got everything here. Why are they not winning? You have every single flash. We used to have a joke. If you invented some new sporting equipment, come here because we'll take it. Because, we wanted to get the whole new buzz in terms of Creo. Oh, we have so many things, but it doesn't guarantee you results. So I was thinking a lot about that, and asked one of our young players last year. He had been inconsistent in the way he was preparing or played games, and his attitude wasn't the best. And I just give him a random coffee talk, and I just say, tell me one thing. Okay, you had 2 doors. You had our door. Okay, if you had to walk through our door, and those 2 doors, Toulouse door and Racing door. Because I wanted to engage what are these young boys coming to the academy thinking of who we represent and what we're all about. And he said, if you walked into the Racing door and you saw everything, what would you feel? What would your sense of feeling get? I was like, flash stuff, cool couches, nice gears. I mean, in Paris. I was in my head. I was like, what is happening here? But it was good to get a perspective of something else. I was like, okay, I get your point, Junior. Was one of our boys, Junior. Then I said, if you had to walk into the Toulouse door, what would you feel? And I was like, pressured. Pressured about what? Because their standards are all high, and their level of trophies and the things I've heard about them and how they train, how they play. I was like, so those are the two doors for me. I was like, thank you. In my head, that's my goal, is to create something with our coaches, is to, before our young boys come up, they need to feel that, what expectations of being in this club's all about. Yes, we have the flashy stuff around us, but I guess a majority of our coaches have been in this podcast, is knowing identity and actually adding something. The hard part is controlling the media, social media stuff, when you have young, inspiring players who are looking more of what players are getting, what they have in life, the benefits. They don't show the other stuff. They don't promote the hard stuff, the hard work, everything else that's important to actually, get your respect and earnings in a team.
I think that's amazing, mate. Just sparked me off just thinking about Craig Bellamy at the Melbourne Storm in Australia Rugby League. He has a 2-week period for the new players that they have to go do work experience. They have to go get on the tools with the tradies for 2 weeks. And the whole reason he does it is just to actually highlight the example how lucky you are to play a sport as a profession. Like, you come into a fantastic club with all the stuff, but I just want you to understand this. And he sends them out for 2 weeks when they first get there to go on the hammers and tools. And that's essentially what you're saying there, is like, if that's your perception, if you're here and it's really nice and all this cool stuff, you're not going to that dark place. Whereas getting out on the tools, it's essentially an uncomfortable place. It's a dark place for a lot of professional sports people. And then you realize, okay, I'm not going to take where I am for granted. I'm not going to just drift through and float. I think you used the word float when you transitioned from All Blacks to Bayonne in the first place. But actually having that appreciation that I'm here for how lucky I am to be here, and let's take every opportunity. And just, that's the life coaching you're talking about, isn't it? Like, it's a good life skill to build on stuff which gets you through life.
That's exactly it. And it's something, like you said, the parenting goes along with that as well. And I want to do that with my kids as well before they want to do anything else in terms of whatever the career they want to choose. But I want them to go through all those labor skills, because they'll shape them into them being reliant on themselves, really, when things rely on other people to do things for them.
Yeah.
So that's some of the tools that me and my wife have spoken about, so we can get them a year or even in a few months of another trade or something difficult, that you can understand what it needs to be this certain, doing the certain occupation, but the struggles and the difficulties of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's the teachings I had from my parents. I was the first representative team to make under 16s in New Zealand. And my old man said, if it doesn't come easy, so I find it hard to get. I'm not a morning person, bro. But I got to the point that the hard part is the first 2 steps out of your bed. Or it's always your first 2 steps when you do a shout and you turn around. But once you take those first 2 steps, every step just flows. And I got to the point I had my shoes and I put it next to my bed, because I didn't have to walk another 10 steps to get to my shoes. But this past was the first 2 steps that I could just put on my shoes. I had no choice. I was up 5 o'clock. And so my parents will go early hours in the morning at 5. So they said I'll jump in with them and they'll drive a few kilometers, South Auckland, bro, letting you know, drive a few kilometers and drop me and they say, run back home.
Love it.
5:30, 6 o'clock, dogs, bro, they're loose. You got random people running everywhere. So it's maybe that I got my speed from, bro. But anyway, it's like you just hear that little moments. It's still dark. It's early hours in the morning. There's no one else here seeing how you're going to work. You got a choice. You can walk when your parents are gone, or you can actually test yourself. That part was a turning point for myself, because it kind of built me in terms of the player that when I found difficult moments in my life, when things became difficult, I turned to that. All you need is a bit of a little light to ignite, to get your few steps to put on those shoes, and there's no choice. But
yeah, and I love that as a coaching phrase too. Like, essentially, by putting your shoes next to your bed, you lower the barriers of resistance to you actually doing the thing you actually wanted to do. And that's part of a coaching job too, right? Like, as coaches, we're part of that process to help lower the barriers of resistance. So you could argue the better planned we are, the better set up we are, the better our chat is, that keeps people's motivation up, that keeps that little light burning bright inside someone. That is lowering the barriers of resistance. If you're putting up
That's
barriers as a coach, just unconsciously or consciously, you're not maximizing your influence on someone.
exactly. I guess the biggest part as us coaches, like I've kind of looked at as the most important thing. Yes, I can coach a guy how to step and run, run lines, but it's the heart behind that person that's doing that step. It's the heart behind those boots who's doing that action that counts a bit more. That's my philosophy in any way, because um, is dealing with the man, because obviously we know the rugby can only go so long, but if you train that person to be the better person and the best version of themselves, we hear this a lot, but it is true, because we can see it more now, how the importance of that is to people in our communities, and the important people being great examples in their homes. We see the more importance of this rugby is just the vehicle to get us to a process that we can enhance ourselves. So it's great learnings, man.
Do you think it's different in this sport particularly as opposed to other sports?
I can be biased, pretty much, but it's, I guess so, man. That's like, I have my oldest son. He's a big boy, but he's not as agile as my two youngest. But in terms of pressure of being under dad, played ABs, played Super Rugby, the pressure of your kids wanting to do the same as dad did. And I told my son, look, son, yes, are you doing it for the right reason? Do you want to play rugby? He said, yeah, dad. But I said, look, you can choose any sport you want. I'll still love and proud of you. But there's one thing I want you to still take from rugby is your core values and respect. That you can take out of from me in terms of rugby. If you want to learn, so if you want to copy and paste yourself, not as a rugby player, but the values what involved what is a rugby player is this. So it's a perfect place, and my kids love coming to the club. I'm always here, but they say, Dad, can we go to the club? Because of that, because of the teachings they get from their coaches and the environment, they make them grow. I'm sure any other sports do it, other team sports, but this is the variation of different skill sets and different scenarios. It's up the roof, But yeah, so pretty much this is the only sport I reckon, but it's being biased, bro.
Yeah, well, mate, as I'm thinking about it now, mate, like you think about a lot of sports, there's a lot like, just take a couple, for example, like swimming, shooting, sprinting. They're all sort of like fixed skill sets, closed skill sets where, there's a way of doing it. It's black and white. Like you swim with this technique, you will be quicker versus this technique. This is the optimal aerodynamics. There's a lot of science evolved around some of that stuff. Whereas rugby is a very open skill set game. There's a huge amount of emotion, there's a huge amount of chaos, there's a huge amount of different scenarios, and so there's not one way of doing it. It's not do it this way. There's a whole plethora of ways of doing it, and you can do that way so much better with a bit of emotion, with a bit of with all these other these life skills. If you're better at those, it's going to be better for the game. And I think that's the big difference that I see. That it's probably the definition of the most open skill set game around. And it's played by big guys, big girls, little boys, tall
shapes.
guys, different shapes. Like from the outset, you look at a rugby team and go, these people are all playing the same sport. But a halfback is playing a very different game to a prop, and a lock is playing a very different game to a winger, all in the context of the same field. Like most sports have, say, a goalie, which plays a slightly different game from the rest. Otherwise, the other 10 players are all playing the same game. So I think that's the joy, I reckon, as a rugby coach, to remember that you don't coach it the same way you coach other high-performance sports. There's a whole different realm, isn't there?
It's a whole different round, and each year is different.
Yeah.
Each year is different, You got probably you get 50 new guys, 10 guys, new personalities, and new guys that come in. You need to put them back on the bus and to tell them the vision, and it's a whole. As you're always on the go, dealing with. Imagine how unique humans are. We're all made differently, and every time as a coach, you're dealing with these people who enter your doors. Everyone's is different. And that's the challenging part, and the exciting part is your connection of that person, despite that person not being the same as that other person, as you trying to make growth in that person. That's the satisfying part, it's the higher purpose than yourself. Because the service I live by, when we talk about culture and stuff, because I live by my old man. He was a chief of our village. He sadly passed away a few years back, but I remember when he got entitled to be the chief, and the spokesman of the village said, explaining his role, and his role was service to his people.
Mm.
And there's a few lines that I'll never forget when the spokesman said, when we're hungry, you're hungry. When we're thirsty, you're thirsty. When we need help, you need help. So it was everything, him telling my dad that he was there to serve the people, be concerned and be worried and putting other people first. And the service and love, it goes a long way when you can, as a coach, you serve people by giving your time, serving them by your expertise. You might not have all the answers, but you can serve them by getting information for them. And that's your role. You're serving other people by bettering themselves. And everyone has a part to play, as we say. There's a saying that you're all part of this jigsaw puzzle, but you see this jigsaw puzzle and you see the vision, what it should look like, but all these different pieces. And your goal is to put everyone into this, to form this vision that you've seen, and everyone plays an important part, and everyone needs to serve their own way to get in this final image, what it should look like. So for me, service is first and foremost.
Gee, mate, that's super deep. And that analogy of the jigsaw puzzle, and you're the person that's trying to put it together to create the image, is very good. Normally, we start the show with the question, how do you define culture? And we've skimmed over it. Well, we haven't actually addressed it directly, but I'd like to circle full round, mate, if you had a definition of culture.
My definition of culture, like, I thought hard about it, what culture means, and culture is something what you're gonna, I try to look in a village concept. What if you had to enter my village? What do you see? What do you hear? And what do you feel? So whatever you enter my village, there will be people respectful. There'll be people open-handed, like giving you help. But there'll be a lot of smiley people, so happy people. But you see, despite whatever they have in their village, they're still content of what they have, and they'll still help other person, their neighbors within the village. So for me, culture is the service and enhancing people, but also shaping people. What I mean about shaping people is, constructive criticism, knowing that you're out of line and you're shaping that person to be the better person that you should be. Enhancing is just to keep encouraging of adding something into their identity or their values or what we stand for as a village concept. I looked at it as some more like that. So yeah, I'm not sure I've actually answered it, bro. It's a big thing, but for me, that's culture. Yeah.
That's good, mate. But culture is a village concept. I think everything around the way villages operate is essentially what a culture is, right?
Everyone needs everyone. I remember some villages, you have your guys who go to fish, but every time if they catch enough, they will share it in the village, It's about sharing and giving. And if one passes away inside the village, everyone else on the other side of the village will help monitor the whole week when the visitors who come and see the family who's gone through hard times. If there's a birthday, everyone else from the village will take a part to add something to make that other person don't have to think about other things and stress out about other things. So I look at more the village concept in terms of the service and love and care and being as one.
Yeah, man. Well, that's a really cool one with that analogy, because certainly in professional environments, sometimes things like marriages, deaths, days are sometimes met with resentment from coaches who go, no, you're a professional rugby player. You don't get to go to your brother's wedding. And it's always an interesting debate, and it really tests how you as a coach defines your cultures, right? So like someone's brother's getting married. Do you say you can have the weekend off and go to that wedding? That is a ethical thing based on how you value culture in yours. And if you're saying yours is a village, then it's a celebratory thing where we celebrate marriages. We celebrate, I guess we celebrate deaths and things as well, and birthdays, and making those little things become part of your everyday being is important, if I think. And certainly with that village concept, it makes it almost highest priority, some of those little milestones.
Mm.
Joe, we've come to that point, mate. It's flown by. The question I want to finish on, my friend, is do you have a belief you hold about rugby or culture or, in fact, life, seeing we've gone down this route pretty deep on this conversation, that you agree with, that you think some of your friends or peers or contemporaries would disagree with?
That's a hard one. It's a top question, bro. It's hard to. I think the only part when I got questioned in the way I coached was how I was delivering a message. And one of the coaches said I was too nice to how I delivered that message, that I should be screaming. And I didn't agree with him. I think when you have because of the connection work that I've done before that, I didn't have to add my volume. If they knew how calm I am, if I go to a tone that I'm really disappointed, if you have the respect, when you have the respect in the change room, when you don't need to be shouting, and coaches have this connection with players and you just say something and they'll do it. Yes, you can question. I'll question more their character rather than their efforts, their skill set, the execution of a skill. But if I know if one coach said, oh, you should be still hard and the execution is not great and you should be blowing them up, so I don't agree with it. I know this guy does his skills and he's still trying to better, but if I'm going to cage him and he loses confidence by screaming at him, the next skill that's going to do, he's going to lose his confidence. And so for me, is the tone of, I know how I should look at it, Benny, but it's the tone how I deliver my message. Sure, yes, most coaches, I just think you got to know the people first before you know which tone to take.
I actually love that, mate. I think it's the same in parenting too. If you take, we've briefly touched on parenting versus coaching. And would you scream at your kids for making mistakes? Would you take an angry tone all the time with your kids if they don't quite hit the things they were trying to hit? You probably wouldn't, if you're being honest. And it's, in my thoughts, the same reason why. Like, is that tone helping them get better or not? And now and then it might be, but on the whole, if it's not you, it's not the place to be doing it. I certainly know when I've lost it at the kids, I walk away going, that didn't help. It hasn't helped me or the children either. And it's probably the exact same in coaching too.
And that's why your values should be all set and standard from the get-go, from the beginning, because you can always come back to that and question, are you doing the values that you promised that you're going to do for us? And that covers a lot. That goes deeper than your tone. Because then it shows that everyone else that you're letting everyone down by just that one question. So that hits deeper, because that'll go in and stick rather than loud voices. That goes bone deep, as many always say.
Joe, what an absolute pleasure to have on the Coaching Culture podcast. If I may, I'd like to just sort of sum up my 3 key takeaways from this awesome conversation. Number 1, we're really life coaches. And you said rugby is the vehicle to understanding life better. So you're practicing reps for life. Things like pressure, setbacks, resilience, how to take constructive feedback, these sort of things that you are able to get in rugby actually carry through and transcend into life. And I think as coaches, if we remember that we're passing on more than the X's and O's, we're actually passing on life lessons, we take a whole new stance towards what we're doing out in the field. Number 2, what's my place in this team? That's a question you said you asked of yourself, but I think it's a wonderful one that all coaches should ask of themselves. You said, if I'm a coach that can make them believe, then the technique comes second. And I just think that's a lovely way. You said, I like to get the engine running. And I think it's important too that we understand that there's multiple ways that you have values on a team. You don't have to be a certain way, but there's a way for everybody and every coach. So to actually ask yourself, what is that way and what's my place in here? And then double down on that sometimes is a great way to maximize your impact as a coach. And number 3, I love this quote you said, I haven't seen a GPS that measures team spirit. And I love that. And we talked about the dark places as where growth happens. And you took Richie McCaw as the example, who said, we got to get to that dark place. No one likes it, but we got to go there. In the dark place is where we find the light place. And I just think that is a sensational value that we can help instill in people as it's a life skill. The dark place isn't a place to avoid in rugby and in coaching and in life. It's a place to embrace. Take 1-2 steps, those first 2 steps towards it, and you'll find the give back that you get, not just in the rugby context, but in life, is huge. And I think it's an awesome one. GPS doesn't measure the team spirit. Joe, what an absolute pleasure to have you join me here on the Coaching Culturing podcast today.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you very much.